Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Hope you guys are all doing well. Andrew Musgrove here. I'm bringing you the Monday show live, just gone 9:45. So thank you very much for tuning in, whether you are watching live or later on the audio channel. Your support, as always, is greatly appreciated. I am doing it solo because Aaron is off gallivanting once again. He's over in Prague, having a wonderful weekend of it. So you're going to have me to talk about Newcastle United 4, Manchester United 1. What a result. What a performance. And there's so much to talk about. A lot of standout performances from Newcastle United's players. Obviously, this is headlined on the fact that I had always backed Harvey Barnes to prove his worth. And I'm so happy that he's proven me right and a lot of the doubters wrong. Although I know there will still be a lot of people watching and listening to this who will say, is he better than Gordon? Look, probably on technical ability, no, but I do think he offers something different. And at the moment, it is working. So it's going to be hard for Gordon to displace him from the starting 11. Although I think when Anthony Gordon came on and Barnes was forced to go over to the right, we probably saw a little bit about where the two players rank in terms of who is going to get that left side above each other, and it's probably going to be Gordon, I think. But right now, Barnes is a man in form since starting against West Ham. Obviously, that was the first game that Anthony Gordon missed through suspension. He's scored 2 goals and 2 assists. Obviously, got the 2 against Manchester United, and has also been involved in creating as well for Newcastle United since coming into the side. And I think he's done really, really well. I understand the questions over his price tag because it was near 40 million. He'd obviously gone down with Leicester, but his numbers at Leicester were fantastic. I thought it was a really smart move. And if you look at his numbers at Newcastle United, 13 goals and 56 appearances for the Magpies. It isn't brilliant, but it's not too shabby. And you've also got to bear in mind that he's missed 38 games through injury. Obviously, he had that kind of heel foot issue, and he's had a couple more fitness concerns. So he's missed 38 games for Newcastle United, and then obviously he's been kept out of the side because Gordon's been in such great form. But I am very, very happy that he's really starting to show what he's worth, and it's tremendous news for Newcastle United that just because Gordon's now fit, he's not guaranteed to walk straight back into the side simply because Harvey Barnes is in great form. And that is what you want. It's what you need when you're chasing down Champions League football. A bit more about Barnes later in the show, but we'll just quickly kind of go over what happened, obviously, yesterday at St James's Park, 4-1 against Manchester United. And we came into the game feeling like Newcastle United were favourites, and that's something that we've not been used to seeing when it comes to playing Manchester United. I mean, I've supported Newcastle United for the best part of 30 years, and how many times can you say that Newcastle United have been favourites against Manchester United? And I have to be quite honest, it's probably on one hand that you can count that. And that mindset, I think, is quite difficult to get used to. That change in from being not favourites to favourites is quite difficult to get used to. But you watched how the fans were yesterday in the build-up to the game. Obviously, it's tremendous war flags display. And you watched how the players handled it as well. It didn't seem as difficult as I thought, or it didn't seem as difficult as I've thinking it might have been, or as I've been feeling. And they absolutely blew Manchester United away and could have won that game by 5, 6, 7 goals. It wouldn't have been unfair scoreline had that finished by Newcastle United winning by that amount. They were absolutely tremendous. Goals from Sandro Tonali, a double from Harvey Barnes, and Bruno Guimaraes wrapping it up. Garnacho obviously got an equaliser, 37th minute, and Newcastle went into half-time level. But they really should have gone into half-time, probably 2 or 3 goals up. They were that good. I know Nick Pope had a couple of saves to make in the first half, but really you never felt too threatened by Manchester United. And the goal came against the run of play. And it was really important that Newcastle United came out in that second half and reacted to going back level. And they did so, 5 minutes on the clock when Harvey Barnes tapped to him. And from that moment forward, there was only ever going to be one winner. We'll quickly run through the goals. Sandro Tonali with an absolute brilliant finish. This is my favourite goal of the whole afternoon. Wonderful ball into Alexander Isak from Kieran Trippier. Isak's got to do really well to control it. He does that, knocks it over the top, and Sandro Tonali, what a finish this is. So powerful, got the direction on it, and he's so close to the goal as well. It's a very, very difficult effort to put into the back of the net, but he gets the technique spot on, and he hits it home. And then we've got, as we said, Garnacho against the run of play, drawing the team's level. Very soft goal to give away. And then we come out after the halftime interval, and Barnes taps home. Jacob Murphy with another assist, drags the ball back across the box, and Barnes is not going to miss from 5-6 yards from the goal line. He then gets his second, and he's just allowed to run straight through the middle of the Manchester United defence. Now, Roy Keane, Manchester United legend, he's gone a little bit crackers at the Manchester United midfield and defence, just saying you've got to tackle them, you've got to take them out if you're not going to manage to win the ball. But I think you've got to give credit to Harvey Barnes here, because he picks up the ball after the mistake from the defender. He reacts the quickest, and he's then got the close control to run direct towards the goal. He's got to shrug off 2 defenders. He's got to have that strength, and then to have the technique to put it into the corner. Absolutely superb finish, a really nice goal. But I think there's too much focus on what Manchester United didn't do, and the focus should be on what Harvey Barnes did, because it was a fantastic goal. And then Bruno Guimaraes picks the fourth. The goalkeeper who'd come in to replace Onan after a series of gaffes looked so shaky. He was pretty poor all afternoon, summed up by this fourth goal. His clearance hits Joelinton square in the face, drops to Bruno Guimaraes, who takes a touch and puts it past the goalkeeper. Really composed finish from Bruno Guimaraes, pouncing on that mistake from the goalkeeper. And that leaves Newcastle in 4th position in the Premier League, 56 points, a point behind Forest, who lie 3rd. But Newcastle have got that game in hand against Crystal Palace on Wednesday. Win that, they go above Forest. And what a tremendous position Newcastle United are now in. Man City below them in 5th on 55 points. And Chelsea, after drawing with Ipswich, on 54 points, down in 6th. And then Villa down in 7th. So then we've got that game against Villa on Saturday, which will be huge. But Newcastle United have a chance to go 3rd on Wednesday. And if you'd offered that in Newcastle a couple of months ago, I'm not sure anyone would have believed you, because Forest were flying. Newcastle United not so much. But it's this run of form that they've been on, and no one since December the 14th, only Liverpool, have collected more points than Newcastle. So Liverpool have collected 41 points since December the 14th, and Newcastle have collected 36, which shows you just how good a run of form Newcastle United have been on. And Liverpool have played 2 more games than Newcastle as well. So that shows you the run of form they are on. I'm backing them to beat Palace on Wednesday and go into that game against Villa in 3rd. Yeah, that's what I think will happen. Back to Sunday's game, first league double over Manchester United since 1931. So history has been made. That's a long, long time to wait. What's that, 95 years or so to get that league double? Tremendous to see that happening. We've got some stats as well, which I think really show you just how well Newcastle United managed this game, because as much as we say they dominated possession-wise and passing-wise, not so much. So, for instance, Newcastle had 420 passes. Manchester United had 472 passes. So there you can see Manchester United had a bit more of the ball. Accurate passes, 339 for Newcastle, 382 for Manchester United. But some of the key, I think, stats, though, you look at backward passes, Newcastle had only 69, whereas Manchester United had 99. So that shows you Newcastle were more confident going forward, whereas Manchester United maybe didn't have that creative spark and were unsure of themselves, so were happier to pass back than they were going forward. Successful final third passes is really key here. So Newcastle had 104 successful final third passes to Manchester United's 62. And that shows you, again, the directness of Newcastle United. And you couple that with the fact that 40% of the game's action happened in Manchester United's third. So there you go. In the final third, 104 passes for Newcastle United, and 40% of the action happened in that final third as well. So it shows you, although they didn't maybe have the top stats when it comes to total passes or total accurate passes, they did have the better of the player when it comes to what really mattered, being in those dangerous areas and making that pay. And there's your 4 goals for Newcastle United. Touches in the boxes, touches in the box, 39-12. So again, it shows you Newcastle dominated in all the right areas. 39 touches in the opposition box to just 12 for Manchester United. And that is why Newcastle United have run out 4-1 winners. The XG was 2.09 for Newcastle and 0.61 for Manchester United. Not a fan of XG, but that tells you again where Newcastle United dominated, and it was in the areas in which they had to turn that kind of domination into goals, and they did do. Brilliant to see. As we mentioned at the start there, Harvey Barnes getting a double. Now, some interesting stats regarding Barnes' form of late. So he carried the ball the most in that game, 233 metres. As we've mentioned, 2 goals, 2 assists in his last 4 Premier League appearances. He's only the second Newcastle United player to score a brace against Manchester United. Alan Shearer was the other one in the year 2000. He's got 8 goals in 26 appearances. Only Alexander Isak's got more this season, and only started 10 games, actually, has Harvey Barnes. So again, I think they're really positive stats. Really shows you how threatening he can be. And if he can just find that kind of end product, then Newcastle have got a tremendous player on their hands. I mean, he's only started 10 games, and yet he's got 8 goals this season. As we mentioned before, 13 goals and 56 appearances for Newcastle United, having missed 38 games this season. 38 games in his time at Newcastle United. And interestingly, Thomas Tuchel was in the crowd watching this game. So who was he here to watch? Tino Livramento, most certainly. Dan Burn, perhaps. Will Dan Burn get another call up following his first England cap? And Harvey Barnes. I think he's only made 1 appearance for England, but in this form, he will be catching the eye because he's direct and he does what you want from a winger. He scores goals. Obviously, as we said, Gordon came on, so maybe he was another player that Tuchel was looking at. But it's really interesting, I think, down that left-hand side because Tino Livramento and Barnes have got a really good relationship. And again, it's really strange because if we'd said at the moment that Anthony Gordon picked up that suspension and the moment that Lewis Hall's injury, season-ending injury, was confirmed, and we'd said to a few weeks later, not only would Newcastle United be sitting with the Carabao Cup in their trophy cabinet, but also they would be within a chance of going third should they win a game in hand. You would have laughed me out of the room had I suggested that. And yet here we are, not really having missed Anthony Gordon through suspension or Lewis Hall. And I just think that speaks volumes about Tino Livramento and Harvey Barnes. And also, if you think about how poor they were in the eyes of some against West Ham, Tino Livramento came in for a huge amount of criticism. And look at him now. He was superb against Manchester United. So confident with the ball running forward. Kept everyone that he needed to quiet. He was brilliant. And that relationship on the left is just flourishing and getting better and better and better. And they're going to need it to. They're going to need it to be at the level that it has been in recent weeks if they're going to clinch Champions League football. But I think those two deserve all the plaudits and potentially leave Eddie Howe with a really interesting dilemma when everyone is fit, because does he drop Tino Livramento out for Lewis Hall? I know this comes next season. We're not talking about the games that are remaining, but Tino Livramento, if Kieran Trippier can continue the form he's in, there's a real dilemma at fullback, a positive one, but a really interesting one nonetheless. But great to see both Livramento and Harvey Barnes take the opportunity that's been presented to them, proving some of the doubters wrong as well, and becoming a really integral part of Newcastle United's push for the Champions League. Let me know in the comments who was your man of the match, because I think you could pick from 7, maybe 8 players, because, again, it was just an all-round performance from Newcastle United where so many players stood out. Sandro Tonali got the goal, as we've mentioned, and he was great again. I thought he covered so much ground. He had a 91% pass completion rate, 42 out of 46 passes complete. I thought he was really, really good. Dan Burn, though, maybe gets it for me. And again, it's one of those where maybe you have to go back and look at the stats. I know the scoreline gets the headlines for all the right reasons. Barnes' brace does, Tonali's finish does. But if you go back and look at the stats, Dan Burn won 10 out of 10 duels, 9 of those were aerial duels, and that was so key in stifling Manchester United because it was quite clear the game plan was to knock it long, which I think is a very bizarre game plan when you go up against someone like Dan Burn and Fabian Schär, and it's Xerxes who is the striker who you're backing on winning these aerial duels. You watched him throughout the entirety of his time on the pitch before he picked up that hamstring injury. He never looked confident going up against Dan Burn or Fabian Schär. But Dan Burn and Fabian Schär both had to do a job still. Even if that player's not confident in beating you, you can't be complacent. You've got to win the aerial duels. And they did that every time the ball went along. Dan Burn was up there winning. Fabian Schär was up there if it wasn't Dan Burn. And I thought he was tremendous, Dan Burn. 4 clearances, 4 interceptions. So near the top of the ranking for that as well. For me, although Manchester United didn't threaten too much, I think Dan Burn played an integral role in keeping those players that he needed to really quiet. So for me, he probably gets man of the match, but you could look at Jacob Murphy as well. 5 out of 6 dribbles completed, and he obviously got the assist. And although I've talked up the left-hand side of Newcastle United, the right-hand side were really impressive as well. Murphy and Trippier, 49% of the attacks came down Newcastle United's right. So that shows you, again, the threat that they're carrying on both flanks. But the stats say they were more threatening down the right with Murphy, with Trippier. Trippier put 50% of his crosses into the box. He attempted 8, got 4 into the box. And those two have got a really nice relationship as well. I mean, we think back to Miggy and Trippier. Now it's Miggy and Murphy. And Trippier, I think, he's just that kind of leader, isn't he? He's got that experience, that lending hand, but also he's got that end product. Now, look, we have to say that he wasn't pressed at all. Manchester United had no want, no desire, just weren't up for this game. I think from the moment the game kicked off, you could tell there was going to be only one winner. There was nothing about Manchester United. They looked like a team devoid of confidence. They look like a team without instruction. They don't look like a team who knows what they're doing. But Newcastle have to beat what's out in front of them, and they did do. But the fact that Manchester United was so standoffish allowed the likes of Trippier, allowed the likes of Livramento to really show themselves from an attacking point of view. Look, they're going to have tougher games. Palace on Wednesday is going to be a tougher game. Chelsea, Everton, Arsenal, Villa, they're all going to be tougher games than this. But what it showed you was that they don't allow complacency to slip in. And what's really important as well, they've done this without Eddie Howe on the touchline. Eddie Howe, so important to Newcastle United. I don't need to tell you how important he is. But to put in this level of performance and to pick up a valuable 3 points without your manager there to give you the instruction on the touchline is absolutely brilliant from Newcastle United. And it speaks volumes about how united everybody is and how Eddie Howe gets his message across to his staff, i.e. Jason Tyndall and Graham Jones and the rest of the coaching staff, that when he's not there, they can just step into his shoes and deliver a performance like this. Absolutely brilliant. And it shows everyone's working together, that everyone's buying into Eddie Howe's message and approach to turning Newcastle into an established, top Premier League side. Really, really good to see. Obviously, would have loved Eddie on the touchline, but it doesn't give you confidence of just how well things are going that he wasn't there, and those who had to replace him did an absolutely brilliant job. We know how good Graham Jones is as a coach. We know how good Jason Tyndall is as a coach, and they showed that in what was a huge game and what was really a must-win game because City had won, because Villa had won. This was a must-win game, and he did it without your manager. I think it's just tremendous to see. Really, really is. And we look now ahead to Crystal Palace with a load of confidence. I'm just going to dive into some comments here. We've got Coin Fraser and Tonali, Barnes, Livramento and Burn, all brilliant. Tonali, for me, man of the match. Rob says, even when Manchester United equalised, I never ever thought we wouldn't win and win comfortably yesterday. I don't think I've ever felt like that about Manchester United before. So many played well yesterday, but Tino has been immense the last few weeks. Tonali class. The list could go on and on and on. Les says, Tonali for me, only because he never give up a ball right up to the final whistle, but there's a case for so many. Will says Palace will be tough. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win for Newcastle. I think Villa will be a tough away game as well. Gary says wouldn't it be great for Murphy to get a call up? And hey, yeah, Thomas Tuchel there, you look at the numbers that Murphy has got this season and in recent weeks. I don't actually think he's been brilliant, Jacob Murphy, but he is producing what he needs to, assists and goals, and you can't ask for more than that. So maybe Jacob Murphy might be a bit of a wild card into the next England squad. He would deserve it because he's had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Obviously, Miggy was out of favour. Then Miggy leaves, and everyone is talking about this new right winger that has to come in. He had to come in last summer. He didn't. He has to come in January. He didn't. He has to come in this summer. Will he? I'm hoping he will do. He'll not be immune to that, but he seemed to have taken it as added motivation, and you can't argue with Jacob Murphy's form and numbers this season. He's been absolutely superb, and whoever comes in is going to have a really tough time of it, nailing down that position on that right wing if Murphy can keep up this form that he's currently in. And fingers crossed he can do. And it would be superb if he could get into that England squad. And a lot of people in the comments saying, why not Murphy for England? That's what Graham has put there. Yeah, why not? Maybe Thomas Tuchel has seen enough to get him into the England squad. Actually, a lot of people are saying, get him in. We've got David saying, Tuchel to watch Murphinho, surely. Will saying, Tino, Burn and Barnes have a chance. Murphy could be in as well. So a lot of people saying, get Murphy into that England squad. Roger says 1-1, half-time was about fair. However, second half, we embarrassed them. Yeah, do you know what? And I think Newcastle actually did deserve to go in ahead at half-time. I know Nick Pope had one good save to make in the in the first half, and then Manchester United got the equaliser. But I still think Newcastle United had enough of the ball and created enough half chances, you might say, to go into the game, into the half-time interval, 2 or 3 up. But that being said, it doesn't matter. They've gone and got the 4 goals or the 3 goals in the second half and ended up getting the victory. Now, I just want to talk about Alexander Isak because I thought he was a little bit off yesterday. I don't think he's really been himself over the last few games, actually. But how refreshing is it to see Newcastle United winning games, scoring goals, and Alexander Isak has not been on form? That is absolutely superb. And what it does, I think it sends out a message. Newcastle United is not built on one man. It's a squad game. And Newcastle United right now have several players who are stepping up, putting in their best performances of the season at the right time and scoring goals. And it's not just about Alexander Isak. You look around other teams and it's all about one man. Manchester United, prime example, it's all about Bruno Fernandes. I mean, where would Manchester United be if it wasn't for Bruno Fernandes? They'd be a lot closer to the relegation zone. And I always think that's a little bit dangerous. I mean, you could maybe look back, further in history and, in the dark days when Newcastle United relied maybe too heavily on Alan Shearer. It was all about Alan Shearer. What we have here today is a team that hasn't got any stars or egos. It's not about one man. It's about the collective. We've got brilliant players, world-class players in Tonali, in Isak, in Bruno, world-class players. But there's no one that stands above the others and takes the headlines and or has that ego running wild. This is a team game, and they're showing that, and it's really important that they're showing it now because, as I say, Isak has been far from his best. He's due a goal. Hopefully, he'll get one on Wednesday. But it's just really nice to see that other players have stepped up to the plate. And I said, you know what? If he can't score the goals, I'm going to do it. Barnes, Murphy, both scoring over the last couple of games. Tonali, Bruno adding goals to their tally as well, because we need to see that midfield three doing that, scoring more goals. And they are doing it. So, there's not that kind of dread of Isak's having a bad couple of weeks because you've got other threatening players on the pitch who are also finding that end product. And that's really, really, really good to see. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on that. Are you hoping that Alexander Isak can grab a couple against Crystal Palace? Why do you think he's not been himself? Or does it not really matter? Every player's going to have an off time of it at some point, and with everyone else stepping up and scoring goals, it doesn't really matter whether Isak is or not. Now, Will here says Isak might not be scoring, but he's putting in a shift. I'm definitely proud of Newcastle. The whole team is putting in a shift, and it proves not a one-man team. It's absolutely class. David says, Roy Keane complimented us on the depth of our squad. Odd one, our squad is thin, but the difference is we all have our players who play for the club and each other. I think that is key. I think you could see that Manchester United are a team who are just on a downward spiral. You could see right from the off, they are not pulling in the same direction. You can see from the reaction from the goals or the reaction from misplaced passes. There's not a reaction that you would want as a supporter, or as Ruben Amorim. You want to see more bite. You want to see more fight for the badge. It's not there. It's not there at all. And even through Newcastle's darkest times this season, when they went on a bad run of form, that fight and that commitment was there, and you could see they were hurting. I didn't see that from Manchester United at all. I saw Bruno Fernandes complaining and moaning, and actually what he was complaining at was, he wasn't getting the shouts from his teammates, and he's saying, I need to know that I've got time to take the ball down and move with it instead of putting it out for a corner. And there was other moans that he was having, and he's spot on with everything he's saying, but also kind of throwing his teammates under the bus at full time in an interview probably doesn't help. It doesn't help that Ruben Amorim's doing the same, saying that some of the players, aren't right for the club. It's a bit of a mess. It really, really is. And it just makes you so happy that Newcastle United are in such a different place than Manchester United. Newcastle United have got a squad that works for each other, that pulls in the same direction. No man left in the trenches, so to speak. And it's a happy place as well. It's a really happy place to be and to work. I mean, as fans, we can feel it. As journalists, we can feel it. And you can see it on the faces of the players as well. It's just a really nice place to call your workplace, I guess. Whereas Manchester United, it looks like everyone goes in with gloomy faces. And it's not a place that is attractive, I don't think. It's not a place you would want to go in on a Monday morning and start the working week. Whereas at Newcastle United, everything looks rosy and looks really, really happy. We've got people saying here, great game, great result. Les saying Isak is more than just is about more than just goals. Totally agree with you. He is, but also that is what he's paid for more than anything else, is about the goals. And my point isn't really a criticism about Isak. My point is, it's a praise. It's about the players now stepping up and scoring goals. That was my point. I wasn't criticising Isak. I was praising those players for carrying the load and scoring the goals and sharing the responsibility for scoring the goals, most certainly. David says, let's be honest, Andrew, we love it when Man United are a bit mess. We certainly do. And look, how nice is it to see Manchester United in a bit of a mess? Let's be honest. We all are loving it, aren't we, as Newcastle United fans? Because they had it good for so long. And I think what was really interesting, growing up this fixture after Kevin Keegan left, was always one of a bit of dread. I know under Sir Bobby we had a couple of wins, but that kind of time period aside, you always looked at this fixture just fearing it. And we hated Manchester United so much. And now I think back, I wonder whether that was more of a distraction to kind of try and hide the fear rising in you every time this fixture came about, because they were so good. And you knew you're going to go up against Manchester United and you were going to get a test and you were probably going to get beat. And that's maybe where that hatred comes from. Now, they rock up on Tyneside. I don't have that feeling of hatred. I don't have that feeling of fear. I want to beat them. But it's a totally different feeling because of the levels in which we're facing. Newcastle United way up high, Manchester United way down low. And you know what? I think they'll be there for a long time to come as well, because that squad, it needs a total overhaul. They're battling PSR and their financial restrictions. There's no way they're going to give Ruben Amorim the squad that he needs. He's too stubborn to change his ways. He's going to continue with this system. It's not going to work. Honestly, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, by the way, ladies and gents, because if I was, I'd be sitting here even happier, because I did predict 4-1. I did say the scoreline was going to be 4-1. But if I was a betting man, I would put a little bit of money on Amorim not surviving past maybe October into the new campaign. I think he'll survive the summer. I think he'll get a few additions, but not enough to turn it around. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of a job come the autumn. I think Manchester United are going one way, and that is just down, 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 down. And look, we're loving it, but we're not here to talk about Manchester United. We're here to talk about just how good Newcastle United are. And they were absolutely brilliant over on Sunday. David says the only thing that is high about Manchester United is where their fans were located. Ian says, big shout out to Harvey Barnes, by the way. He's waited his chance and he has taken it. Will says, Isak will start scoring soon. Watch him get 3 on Wednesday against Palace. I hope so, because he is my Premier League fantasy football captain. The pop imager says, in my opinion, we need to strengthen defense and midfield before a right winger and striker. Well, this is the interesting debate, and I want to really get your comments on this. So jump into the comments on YouTube. Let me know on social media your thoughts. Where did Newcastle United strengthen in the summer? Because I think there's a couple of positions you could pinpoint. It's just about getting that priority right. Now, as we said there, the pop images on YouTube, it says we need to strengthen defense and midfield before right winger and striker. Now, some people would look at the midfield and say, well, actually, it's a little bit oversubscribed as it is, because you have Longstaff, Bruno, Tonali, Joe Willock, Lewis Miley, and Joe Linton. That is a lot of players in there. Are you necessarily going to go out and buy an upgrade? And if so, who drops out of the side? Joe Linton, Bruno, or Tonali? I'm not sure. I think that's the midfield three going into next season. I don't think a new midfielder is a priority, not for me anyway. I think the priority still remains a right winger. I don't think you want to start next season with just Jacob Murphy and then having Harvey Barnes, Anthony Gordon able to switch over, because you want the battle between Barnes and Gordon to be happening out on the left. That's their favourite positions. Leave them out on the left fighting it out. You need someone to come in on the right wing and have a battle between him and Jacob Murphy, whether that be Brian Mbeumo, whether that be Jared Bowen, whether that be Anthony Elanga, whether that be Semenyo from Bournemouth, or someone who hasn't been linked. I don't know. But I think the right wing is probably the most important, and then a striker for me, most certainly. I know Matheus Cunha has been watched and linked over the weekend. For me, I've changed my mind on him. Big fan of him. I said he was my dream signing. I'm not sure he's got the right attitude for this Newcastle United squad. And we talked just earlier about the lack of egos and about how good the character is in this squad. He, for me, would break that. I think he looks like a bit like a disruptive player. Am I backing Eddie Howe to bring him in and change that? Yeah, I could see that happening. But if you're going to spend the best part of 50, 60, 70 million pounds, I think you need to go elsewhere and not bring someone in that you're worried who maybe could disrupt the dressing room feeling at the moment. So Cunha, for me, brilliant player, but it's the attitude I've got a little bit of a worry about. Liam Delap, would he come? I think he'd be a tremendous addition to Newcastle United squad. Totally different player to Alexander Isak, but this is questions over whether he would be happy playing second fiddle to Alexander Isak, because they are going to hold on to Isak this summer. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see who they do bring in. I think they will go out and try and sign a centre-back as well to battle Fabian Schär on that right side. I think that they need that. They really, really do. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go. Will it be Mark Gay? I'm not too sure about that. I think he might end up at Chelsea, if I'm being totally honest. But one to wait and see. Gary saying we would have been 3-1 up at half-time if Onana was in goal. We've got DXK here going through his list of players this summer. So he's saying, let's get Mbeumo, Gay, Trafford and Calvert-Lewin would give us depth and power all the way through the squad, as long as we keep Isak, Bruno, Tonali, Joe Linton, Barnes, Gordon, Botman, Burn, Schär, Hall and Tino. I mean, look, let me know in the comments if Newcastle United finished the summer transfer window having signed Mbeumo, Mark Gay, Trafford from Burnley and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Would you be happy with that? I think the Calvert-Lewin suggestion might provoke a little bit of debate. Roger says, same. I agree, Andrew. Midfield is class with good options as it is. Right wing, we need a forward and a centre-back. Ian saying we need a backup striker, then a right wing, and then a centre-back. It's pretty obvious, he adds. Will says we need a centre-back for cover while Botman is out. We definitely need backup to Murphy and definitely a striker for backup to Isak. Don't know what the future holds for Wilson and Asula, who will come good. The pop images say, my concern is if Joe, Bruno or Tonali get injured, then there's no cover with the consistency or quality we need. That is a fair point. I think Lewis Smiley in time will provide that cover and that competition, but I get the point that you're making there. We've got Diblin would also be a player that he could develop into a top class winger. Yeah, but he's also going to cost the best part of 80 to 100 million pounds. That's the report. Ian says we aren't paying 100 million for anyone, let alone Diblin. Gary says Calvert-Lewin would be a free agent, right? He would be. It's just whether he's gotten over his injuries. And I have to say, I think it would be a gamble because I think his wages of just over £100,000 would be a lot to stake on Calvert-Lewin. He's a great forward. His record speaks for itself, but his injury record does as well. And I think if you're going to go out and spend that on wages, you need to go out and spend that on someone who can play a little bit more than Calvert-Lewin has in recent seasons and more than Callum Wilson. Because would you just be replacing one injury-prone striker with another? That would be the question. And I think looking at the stats, maybe the answer would be yes. So you might want to turn elsewhere. We've got Andy saying, sent my CV to Manchester United, got a contract offer in reply, a starting goal tomorrow. Yeah, the goalkeeper situation at Manchester United, not great, but Newcastle United had to take advantage of it and take advantage of it. They did. And how are we all feeling then? Newcastle United, are they going to beat Palace on Wednesday and get up to third? I am confident they will do. Will Eddie Howe be back in time for that game? I don't think he will be. We wish him well. I think he's still in hospital getting whatever treatment it is that he's needing. Hopefully he'll be back in time for that Villa game. But if not, we've got total confidence in Graham Jones and Jason Tyndall to make sure Newcastle United continue this great run of form. Hopefully the win over Manchester United has boosted Eddie Howe's spirits and he'll be out and fighting fit in no time at all. This has been the Monday show. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. We will be... Oh, Aaron has jumped into the comments. What a win. Loving the show from Prague. There he is, ladies and gents, watching from Prague, probably on the beers in the Prague sunshine. But yeah, we've got a few more questions just before we wrap up here. Do you think Keegan will appear at St James's Park anytime soon? It's a really interesting question. I mean, the display was really good from War Flags yesterday. For anyone who didn't see it, you had Keegan spelled out on the East Stand, and then you had an image of him in the Gala Gate, and you also had a flag in the Leazes paying tribute as well. Will he be at St James's Park anytime soon? Look, I don't know if you need that sort of distraction. Kevin Keegan is a legend. Of course he is. Came as a player, saved Newcastle United, got them promoted, came back as a manager, got them within touching distance of the Premier League title. And of course, that tennis era is something that will be remembered till the end of time. But do you need that distraction right now? I'm not too sure you do. I think you want to just focus on getting this team over the line for the Champions League. You know, pre-season, maybe get Kevin Keegan back, help sell a few tickets for if it's going to be the Sellout Cup again in the summer. I don't think you want that distraction of Kevin on the pitch anytime in the remaining 4 or 5 home games. Not for me. Let me know in the comments what you think. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Ian says, in regards to Calvert-Lewin, how to solve a problem like Isak, there isn't a striker in the world that could challenge Isak's spot. Well, I mean, he is tremendous right now, but you know, you bring someone like Jonathan David, who's a brilliant striker. I think there are strikers out there who can push Alexander Isak, and we have to bear in mind that's what he needs. You know, no player can remain at the top level if they're just left there without any competition. Competition is the undercurrent of a successful Premier League side, a successful side across Europe. You need that competition. So I think Newcastle United, if they can make the money work, will look to get someone who will push Alexander Isak. That's what the club needs. That's what Alexander Isak needs. We just need to find the money and to see if the budget could stretch. Will says, good point that Miley provides cover if Big Joe, Tonali, Bruno gets injured, but he's still so young and plenty to learn. He is. Didn't have much of an impact against Manchester United, but the more game time he gets, the better he will get. David says, Haaland has no real challenges. Yeah, and he's not had the best of seasons. I know his numbers are fantastic overall, but he's not had the best of season. And to be fair, that's why they've brought in Mamouche, who was superb in the Bundesliga. They went out and signed probably the third or fourth best striker in Europe at that time, brought him in, and look now, Haaland out injured, and Mamouche is having to fill in. And that's the really key point there. Alexander Isak sits out 5 or 6 games. It's Callum Wilson. Now, who would you rather have, Mamouche or Callum Wilson? I know who I'd rather have, with all due respect to Callum Wilson. And that is the difference. It's about building a squad that can adapt to injuries and suspensions. And I think if Newcastle United can find the money and find that budget to stretch, then you go out and do what Man City did, and you spend on a striker who's not just here to make up the numbers, not just here to cover suspensions and injuries, but to play and score goals and push your main striker. For me, that's how Isak gets better and better. It's all about competition. But it is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. Roger says, who knew Sandro would be so good? Bruno, let's see who else they find. Exactly. You know, Newcastle United have done very little wrong in the transfer market, and whoever they bring in the summer, I'm backing them to be the right player to take Newcastle United to the next level, because history speaks for itself. They've done very well in the transfer market so far. The Pop Images says, I'm hoping Asula will do a Tino or Hall and be absolutely amazing in his second season and be a backup striker or right winger. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I'm hoping for that as well. Seen enough to suggest as a player there. It's just about getting that raw talent into something special, but fingers crossed he can do. Right, ladies and gents, I hope you've enjoyed the Monday show. It's been a pleasure speaking to you all. Please do leave us a rating and review. Please do hit subscribe. Give a thumbs up on YouTube as well. Sponsored, as always, by NordVPN. Hit the link in your podcast description box for a discounted offer on your NordVPN plan. Can be used across 10 devices. Protect yourself and support the podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with John Gibson for the match preview ahead of that Crystal Palace game. Then we'll have a view from the opposition as well. So do stay tuned for those. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.